All right. Hi, everyone. We are here for our final workshop of the day. We are going to be doing some Galaxy Stablemates with Missy Shaw. If you guys are joining us, you can head over to our YouTube channel. We'll have a live chat. And if you have any questions along the way for Missy, ask them in that chat and I will get those questions to her and she will answer them in real time. If you miss a step or you're not able to join us right now, this workshop will be recorded and posted on the National Fun Day event page, so you can go back and watch. But right now, I'm here with Missy Shaw. So, Missy, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and then introduce your workshop, and we'll get right into it.
All right, that sounds great. So my name is Missy Shaw. If you call me Melissa, I will assume I am in trouble, but you might also see me go by that every once in a while. Um, Gosh, what is there to say? I live over here in Oregon. I have been collecting since the early 90s, which is why my hips hurt in the cold weather. Um, Gosh, I've been customizing for a few years, and the first time I sat down and made a galaxy horse, I went, "Oh, I really like that. I should do more things like that." And it's sort of become like one of my most favorite, most therapeutic things to do. So we will go ahead and get started. I'm gonna glove up here. This is so I have several models in several stages to show you here, and this is what we are going to end up with. Don't know if you guys can you see that okay?
Yep.
So perfect. So this little guy, you can use any model you want to. I have done Galaxy horses on basically every size of model, except for the micros. Although I did just get some like light up magnifying goggles, so who knows, that might be next.
Might be when the pipe works for you.
Yeah, exactly. I just it's a matter of having to get like right here to do it, and that can just make you go cross-eyed. So um for this, I kind of want to take a second to show you the materials that I have. This is one of those things where you know, if you have a kind of pigment that works really well for you, if you have a brand of acrylic paint that works really well for you, don't do what I did when I first started learning how to do makeup, which was go, oh, I clearly have to go out and buy everything that this a makeup artist is using, and it's going to cost me several $100s. If you have materials that you really like that work for you, by all means use them. I start these models are somewhat prepped, which means that I've sanded down the seams. I've made sure that there's no real rough areas. I didn't go too in detail like carving out ears or anything like that, but if you want to do that, of course you can. I'm gonna start with an already primed model. What I use for primer on these guys is actually a chalkboard spray paint. I find that that gives it, this is the Rust-Oleum brand. Yeah. I got that at Michael's, I think, so pretty accessible. I found that this as a primer gives the best kind of tooth to the model. It has a little bit of grit to it. So when you're putting on a pigment, it adheres pretty well. You can even kind of buff the pigment in, you'll see. But you stand a lot less chance that it's going to slide right off. So that's what I recommend starting with. You could do, you know, any kind of base. I've done like some rainbow shimmer models on a white base. That's fine too. I just really like kind of the oil slick nighttime sky look that the black gives. Let's see here. What else do I have? Okay, so I have multiple different kinds of kind of shimmery pigments. My favorite, if I were to choose, my favorite brand is the Pearlex. They come in little canisters and they're loose pigments like that. So I have those in several different colors. They make them in just about every hue you can imagine. Some of them are like duochrome, which means you put them on and they look one color, and then when you seal them, they look entirely different. Some of them are color shift, some of them are really glittery, and others are more of a subtle sheen. But those are my favorite. You can get them online. I've never been to a store that had them in person. Michael's doesn't carry them, and that's about all I have down here. So to the internet. I also have, where are they? I've gotten these on Amazon actually. Some of the shimmers that I use, some of the loose pigments are the same that like nail techs use, or people who do like clear liquid resin art. and they're in these like little jars, but these work really well. It's nice to be able to use more than one kind because some, depending on the material, depending on the brand, they can give an entirely different look, and sometimes it's really fun to layer those different types of shimmers. I have also done a few models with eyeshadow, believe it or not. Different schools of thought on whether or not that's um, the best material, but I have done it. In fact, where do I have anything behind me? Yeah. Oof. I've done most of my rainbow horses, their bases are eyeshadow. So you can do that. I have a lot of eyeshadow, trust me. Ones that have shimmer pigments and come in like this, those can look really, really cool on a black based model as well. So my dog and my bearded dragon are looking at me like I'm nuts. They're like, no, she's talking to herself again.
They're having fun.
They are. So I'm going to start, like I said, I've got models in all different stages of production here so that I can show you sort of the different phases that I go through. Step one, though, is going to get this hair on my face. This is ridiculous.
And for anyone who's just joining us, we will have this recorded, so no worries if you don't have any of your stages prepped. You can rewatch this video and follow along after. We also have that chat feature, so if you have any questions, definitely pop in there and we will get those questions to Missy.
Thank you. I'm very nervous, by the way, so you guys are gonna have to bear with me.
You are doing a great job.
So again, we're going to start with one that has already been primed with black chalkboard paint. I don't usually have like a rhyme or reason to which colors I start with. And there's no real rhyme or reason to where you put any of the colors. That's why this is such a therapeutic kind of style for me to make art in, is because it's very much I feel like putting this color here, I feel like putting this color there. There aren't as many hard and fast rules as other things I put myself through in terms of art. So all right, so I've got my main pigments out kind of in front of me here. I'm not sure, I'm borrowing my son's phone. Oh my gosh, no, Sam, go lie down. I don't have time for this right now. Sorry, my dog is barking, presumably at the mailman. Hey, go lie down. All right, so we're going to start this guy right here. I use a few different kinds of brushes as well. Ironically, I have found that some of my oldest fluffy brushes where there's not even paint on the handle anymore are the absolute best at applying these pigments because you can just sort of tap them on. Others that I like are these pastel smoothie brushes. I got them on Amazon. They are, I think the brand is Creative Mark. Sam, stop it. Stop it. Sorry. Yeah, go lay down. This is Sam. I don't know if you can see him, but he's saying hello. I got these on Amazon. I also like these dense brushes right here. But really, and I have old makeup brushes that work too, that work just as well. So this particular style is fairly forgiving. So I'm going to start with probably, oh, my favorite Pearl-Ex, which is the Duo Red Blue. This one's really cool because, oops, flip that over. It goes on kind of pink. But after, can you see it okay?
Yep.
But after you seal it, this pink turns blue and it's just gorgeous. So I'm just putting it on here any which way. And I am gonna just, it's really okay. I mean, that application doesn't look even. I'm not buffing it in. I'm not, trying to make it real smooth. I'm okay if there's a lot of pigment just sitting on the horse right there. Sometimes I'll just give it a little blow off if I feel like there's a little too much, but that's really, really okay because when you seal it, it'll sort of settle all that down. So that's one color there. I'm going to take some of this brighter purple on the other side here. And just like with the other color, I'm just sort of tapping it out. There's no real, it's not precise. It doesn't have to be. In fact, it shouldn't be. Otherwise, it doesn't look as galaxy-ish in my experience. That's not a word.
And these are pigment powders. We have a question asking
yes.
if it's a pigment or a liquid color, but I believe you said these are powders.
Yes, they are. I don't know which camera is the best to see that on, but they come in these little jars right here. All right, let's see. The rest of them, all the rest of them that are in different stages of production, all look more or less the same. And apparently I don't feel the need to follow that formula with this one. We do. Just to kind of give you an idea, like this is again is a really old like craft brush, like the kind that came with the Crayola watercolor sets, I think. I couldn't even tell you how long it's been in my art supplies, but I majored in art at the U of O, and one thing I learned was don't throw anything away because you never know when you're going to need it. And then just to kind of give you an idea, I am going to use, this is, I think, the e.l.f. brand, as I throw it, the e.l.f. brand, like an eyeshadow brush. And I want to show you a little bit how a different, more dense brush changes the application there. So it doesn't heap quite as much pigment on it, but you can sort of brush it in a little bit more. And you honestly, you can use any colors you wish. I tend to veer more toward like the blues, the greens, a little bit of purple here and there. I find that's just the color palette I tend to reach for the most. And I do, by the way, when I'm doing this, I wouldn't say this is necessarily as vital as when I use pan pastels or for realistic colored horses. But I do try and keep one brush per kind of color family. So I'll use one brush for the blues and the greens, another for the pinks, reds, purples, things like that. Just because sometimes if you use it for a green and then you turn around and use it for a red, it can really muddy the color because those two are across from each other on the color wheel. So you end up making kind of a brownish. Let's see. I need a new brush. Yeah, not that one. There we go. So many of my brushes are just hanging on by a thread here.
And when you're just putting these on, you're just, there's no rhyme or reason. You're just picking a place on the horse and you're just
Pretty much,
putting
yeah.
the color wherever you feel like you want it.
Exactly. Now, I will say, if you want to have the colors have a more like stark delineation between a blue and a red, you can have it be as stark as you want it. I tend to overlap a little bit because I find that it gives it more dimension, I guess is a good way to phrase it. So, yep, just tapping those on every which way. I will tell you, if you can see, this is this mat that I have underneath my work here. It's like a silicone sort of mat. I like it because it doesn't slide around a lot and things don't slide around on it. But I would definitely recommend having some kind of drop cloth under you, because this is, as you can probably see, we got pigment in the air. In fact, I should probably have a mask on. Oh well. I do have one here, so put on a mask if you don't want to be breathing stuff. Somewhere I can hear Shauna McDaniel screaming at me to put on a mask. All the way from Canada, I can hear her. Okay, so this is not done, by the way. But let's pretend for the sake of time that it is. You can see that I've got just loosey-goosey pigments all over the place. None of them are really none of them are really like brushed in. And you might ask yourself, how on earth is that going to work? Well, sealer. The magic is sealer. I do all of my first layers. Everything until the very end is sealed with matte. My experience is that the matte's kind of like the chalkboard paint. It has sort of a tooth to it. If you seal every layer in gloss, it's going to be very hard to keep that pigment from just whoosh, off into oblivion off the horse. So I seal all of the under layers with the matte sealer. I like the Montana. I get this on Amazon. Once I got lucky enough to find it in store at Michael's. It is my favorite. I've used Krylon as well, and in a pinch, especially for these guys, I'll use Krylon because the end result is going to be in gloss. But I still, if I had a choice, I'd go for the Montana personally. So this is what one layer of pigment pre-sealer looks like. Let's imagine I'm getting up and I'm going outside to seal the horse. I'm not, but let's say I am. You would come back with it looking something like this. me see that. Okay. Now, on some sides here, by the way, that I don't know if you guys can see that portion right there. That was this pink. So that's what you have when you have like a duochrome Pearlex. It's going to go on one color, and then after the sealer, it's going to be a different color. So don't be alarmed. That's what it's meant to do. But you'll notice that that's not very, with the exception of maybe this green on the shoulder, that's not very bright. You can't see it very well. And that's because this takes a lot of layers. Once it's been sealed and is dry with the matte sealer, you can go on in for layer number 2, which is exactly the same process as layer number 1. Now, you can, I've done this before with some models where I've actually done one layer in one color only, and then layered the different colors on top of it. You can absolutely do that. For these, I just continued to layer on the colors exactly in the same places they were, just for the sake of simplicity. So. And by the way, I'm primarily a tail holder when I customize, but if you are a person who likes like a double-sided foam tape on a base, that is, I admire you. I've done more harm than good with that method because, well, don't ask. So here I am going back over the model with the same colors as I did previously in the same places and in the same fashion, kind of. Sometimes as I get toward I usually do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, three layers of the pigment before I start working on the details. If you want to do more, you can.
How long should you let the sealer dry in between each coat?
That's a really good question. And it sort of depends on your environment. We aren't, and if any of you went to or live in the South or live in humid places or went to Breyer Fest this last summer, in humid environments, sealer takes a lot longer to dry. And so you'll be waiting a little bit longer. You want to not have it be tacky at all when you pick it up. So what I'll do is I'll kind of keep an eye on it. If it starts to look like I think that's dry, I'll just touch the back of my finger to a place where you're not going to notice if it leaves a little sticky mark, like the back of the leg or something. And if it's sticky or tacky at all, I won't touch it until it's dry.
That is a good tip. I know I like to rush things, so it's
Oh,
almost better to, err on the side of caution and go a little bit longer than you want.
I agree. I agree completely. Now, I will tell you the Montana, the matte sealer for me dries pretty quickly. The gloss that I use at the very end, I have to leave at least overnight before I even want to think about touching it. I kind of forgot where I put everything. So again, just going in with colors, 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 colors. And by the way, these if you're painting stablemates, or I should say, like in this case, sort of pasteling stablemates, a little goes a long way. Like if you have one whole canister of these bad boys, it'll last you a goodishly long time. Different story if you're doing traditionals, but they do pack quite a punch. Just give you an idea too. 1 second. Where's that palette I had? I could also, gosh, let me think of this. If you have any of these like little foam end like applicators, I don't know if I wasn't a girly girl when I was little, but I remember like my cousins would have those like kid eyeshadow palettes, and they would always come with this. You can use those too. Those work pretty well. And so this is just kind of gives you an idea of what a pressed shimmer eyeshadow and a little applicator. Sam, you're not going outside. You're gonna just have to live with it. The squirrel is taunting him. We have one squirrel in the backyard that just lives to make my dog miserable. So that, and if you can see, that kind of gives you an idea of what like a shimmer eyeshadow applied with a really cheap little applicator. You still get a really good, shimmer effect from that. It doesn't have to be high-end brush and a high-end pigment pot in order for it to look pretty cool. My husband is insistent that I work on top of a mat, on top of a tablecloth, because we got a new to us table, and the last table that we had looked less like a kitchen table and more like a toddler's art station, and that is my fault completely.
It just means that you're having more fun.
It truly does, yes. Sam, you need to go away. Do you want to help? Hi, you need to go lay down. No, stop nudging me.
And so as you're oh, we do have a question
Okay.
from Carrie. Can you use any glitter and incorporate it into the she's asking if you can use glitter and incorporate it into the color palette on the horse.
I regularly do. Yeah. In fact, I don't usually do it till I'm a little bit further along in the process. I don't necessarily think I would do it in the first layer or two, but set this guy down. Should have gloves on both hands, but what are you gonna do? Let's see. Oh, sure. So this is, I mean, this is a loose glitter. It's a very fine glitter. This is meant for eyeshadow. I mean, be careful, by the way. Disclaimer, be careful anytime you put glitter near your eyes. I can't even tell you how many times, but that you certainly can. It's a very fine glitter. It's almost like a powder glitter, but you can, let's see. There's a good brush for this. I guess I can use this one. The more glittery you are here, try and tap off some. Good golly. So put it right there. That's a really nice little application. Like I said, I tend to do it in the later stages because that's where you start thinking about stars. This is a galaxy horse after all. But so you can see how that gives a really, really vibrant glitter. The matte finish will, dull it a little bit, but again, that's why I typically save them till the last step or two, because the gloss will really help that glitter pop. All right, so then this is a horse that already had a layer on it when I picked it up. Now it has an additional layer, just like I would do with the first one. Gonna go outside, gonna seal it, let a little time pass. I will, and full disclaimer, by the way, this is why, because I'm an impatient person and I really, really like to do art, and I'll sit down and just like art for like an hour. I don't have a whole lot of leisure time to sit down and do art. So when I do, I want to really make it count. So I will put some pigment on a horse, go out, seal it, let it sit, literally pick up another horse and do something on it, just so that I can feel like I've been the most productive that I can. And then by the time I've finished that layer or that detail, perhaps the horse is dry and ready for something else. So here's one that has had 2 pigment layers on it. You can start to see like the colors on the last one I picked up, they were almost not visible on this side at least. But here you can start to see a little bit of a red shift, a little bit of a blue shift. That green is brighter. There's a little purple down there. So the colors are really starting to build. And that's why layers, especially when you're working with a black base and you are sealing it, you have to do layers. Go back in. So again, same thing. Pigments in all of the places. Throw on some glitter if you'd like. Oh, and here, this is that dense smoothie brush. I'll show you what the color payout with that looks like. And I do, by the way, when I get some pigment on, I do tend to tap it a little. Sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it. So you can just sort of tap it on. You can swirl it and sort of, blend it out if you want. I tend to blend where, 2 colors are going to meet. And then here in the middle of that sort of patch of color, I tap. I will say that by the time I've like finished with, an evening doing any kind of art, it does very much look like a caffeinated toddler was left unattended for too long. But that's the fun, right? For those of you who know me,
it just means you were having more fun. The more mess equals more fun.
Speaking of that, those of you who know me in real life will wonder why on earth is it so quiet in my house. I sent the kids with their dad, with my husband, to pumpkin painting thing at a hardware store. Because otherwise my daughter would be
Doing their
right
own
here.
crafts and you're doing your crafts.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very crafty sort of day.
And for anyone who's just joining us right now, feel free to ask any questions in that chat. Missy has been awesome in answering them, and she is doing an incredible job explaining what she's doing and following along. I mean, I don't really have an artistic bone in my body, and I've been following along, and so far it's coming out really cool.
It's I would this I won't say it's the simplest thing necessarily, but it doesn't have to be precise and it doesn't have to be, well blended. In fact, sometimes the less blended the better. It's one of those things where if I overthink it, it's going to turn out in a more eyebrow raising than if I just let myself go.
No, and that's what's awesome about these fun day workshops is, we try to pick workshops where, even if you do mess up or, it's gonna turn out okay. It's gonna turn out pretty awesome. And because everything, there's so many different ways you can do it. Like, you might be using different colors than Missy and it's still gonna turn out pretty awesome.
Where did I have a Oh, I do, like I said, I do tend to go, thank you, by the way. I do tend to go with kind of those more dark jewel tones. But if you were to take something a little bit lighter, like um, that can show up really cool too. I pre-selected my brushes and now I'm wondering, why did I pick this one again? So you can tap on some lighter colors here and there. Maybe blow off a little bit of the excess. You can use canned air too. And I'd like to assure anyone who's ever bought a model from me, I promise I didn't spit on your horse. Okay, maybe promise is not the word, but I try not to. Okay. So that's one of those. So I put that sort of lighter. It looks pink in the container. It goes on kind of rose gold. And the more you blend it, the more gold it looks. So I sort of just took this brush and just placed it wherever, and it looked a little too splotchy for me. So I took a big fluffier brush, which is held together by masking tape, and just sort of tapped it and blended it out just a little bit so it wouldn't look quite so splotchy. But again, the magic of it is then when you seal it, everything sort of melds together. So this is now a horse that has had three, thinking someone like carry the one that has had 3 layers of pigment on it. Again, imagine I'm going out to seal it and it's gonna end up looking like this. So now those colors are really starting to pop, but they're still a little subtle in places. For me, this is good. Like this is a good place to be before I proceed to the next thing. Absolutely, you can layer, layer, layer. If you want it to be really, really bright, you can do that. They make well, I don't know how many colors they make, but there's more than one color of chalkboard paint out there. So if you want to start with a chalkboard paint primer layer that's lighter because you don't necessarily need it to look this dark, you can always do that too. But for the sake of time, we're going to pretend that this guy is done with all of his layers and he's ready for the next step. Before I do the next step, I am going to put all the lids back on my pigments here because this next step involves a splattering of paint. Oops, there we go.
And you said you like to work with jewel tones. Do you have any like if you had to pick 3 different colors you like working with the most, what would those colors be? We have a question in the chat.
Yeah, I will be honest with you. My favorite one of the Pearl X's is this duo red blue, the one that goes on pink, and after you seal it, it looks dark blue. That's my all-time favorite. And I will admit, half of it being my favorite is I will never stop going ooh when I spray it and it turns blue. Maybe I'm just simple that way. But I would do that one. I would probably also recommend like a purple. I have the which one is this? Oh, this is the Reflex Violet. But I would probably do a purple, a blue, and then either something tealish or green. I think that those are probably the the best ones, the most versatile ones. If I were
All
to
great
choose.
colors.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna bring in a little palette here. I am going to bring in some paint. I have my white Liquitex, but honestly, any white paint you have, but I have a nice tube of Liquitex here. I also have this ancient container of like Delta acrylic paint that has been kicking around. This bottle is probably older than my daughter, if we're being totally honest. It is not new. And for this stage, this is one of those times where it doesn't have to be a high-end paint. I'm going to use my Liquitex just because I like it, but I'm going to use it fairly sparingly. Okay, that's more than I need, but that's okay. So I'm just going to put a little dollop of white paint here. And for this, I use an old toothbrush. Just anything, and doesn't have to be a toothbrush. You can use a paintbrush if you would like. Anything that has bristles, you can do that too, because you're absolutely going to be splattering some paint. You're going to want to water it down. If you make it too watery, I mean, this is a yeah, duh, Missy moment, but if you make it too watery, that white's not going to be super visible. It's going to be a lot more sheer. So I tend to err on the side of a little too watery though, because the last thing I want is for these thick globs of paint to just go everywhere. And also, remember that you can always go back over. You can always go back over things more than once. So there, I've got a goodly amount of watered down white there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to dip this old toothbrush in it and get all of the bristles covered there. Set this off to the side. Um, little tip, if you're like me and you like to work on more than one horse at a time and you're getting ready to do this step, move them out of the way. Move them out of the way, otherwise you will have white stars on every model in the vicinity. So you want your workstation as clear as possible, nothing that can't absolutely get splattered with white paint, because then you look up and you go, oh, okay, I guess we're repriming that. Been there. So I'm gonna hold this guy in front of you here. Now, the closer you are with the paint, the bigger your drops are going to be. And there's a certain technique to splattering the paint, I guess. If you go quickly and from far away, it's very fine. If you hold it closer and do it kind of slower and push your finger into the bristle more, you tend to end up with bigger little specks. But honestly, to me, and I might be overhyping it, but to me, this is the most transformative part of it, because until then, you're just like, okay, yeah, I mean, it's a horse and it's got colors on it. And as soon as you introduce the stars to the night sky like this, you go, oh, I get it. It's a galaxy. Yeah, okay. And I have I have created these galaxy horses, and through layers 1, 2, all the way up to where I think, okay, we're ready to stars. I've had some that I look at and I go, no, this doesn't look right. This doesn't look good. And then I keep going, and we get to the star step and I go, oh no, that's great. That works. So you're going to have those, by the way. And I'm a big, is it proponent of the idea that the more you work on something, the more times you do it, it's better, put it this way, it's better to try churning out, in my opinion, multiple pieces, because every piece you get your technique down, every piece the muscle memory starts getting stronger. It's better to do more than it is to spend an agonizing amount of time trying to make one perfect. Obviously, I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who has bins on bins of horses in her garage. So if you only have one model, maybe that's not the best advice. But it never hurts to just push through and go, oh, okay, well, this one wasn't my best, but the next one will be better. That said, there's also nothing wrong with going, yeah, no, don't like it, let's start over, and repriming the whole dang thing. You can always do that. So this is a horse who has had his little wee stars put on. Now there are some, that are smaller. There's some areas on the horse where it's almost just a whisper of white. You can go in and kind of, what would be the word, make some of your stars more obvious, I suppose. I'm looking for the little tool I thought I had. Where on earth did it go? So I like these guys. You can use a very fine paintbrush as well, but I find that if I want the stars to be more circular, it's easier to use one of these little tools. I actually think this one came from a Breyer West sculpting workshop. Pretty sure it came home with me from that. But what I'm gonna do, and this is fun too, by the way, if you like constellations, if you know your astrological sign, you can go in and, just taking this tiny little point right there, and you can create the constellation on the horse. That's always a fun little addition. But I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna take the smallest, tiniest little ball end of this tool, and I'm gonna tap it in the white paint. And then I'm just gonna go on, find some places that don't have very many big stars, and just add one. Like I said, I'll do this with a very fine tip brush too. And if I'm being completely honest, I discovered this last night. um, but it is a really handy way to have more circular stars. And by the way, too, I mean, this is a galaxy themed model. If you want to add a planet or a comet, shooting star, I think my mom, I don't know if you're watching, but I think yours has a comet on it somewhere. That was many, many galaxy horses ago. I might be wrong. So
We do have a question in the chat.
yeah,
Have you ever, what is your favorite galaxy horse that you've ever made?
who asked that? No, I'm kidding. You don't need to tell me. Oh boy. It's a tie. That's the diplomatic answer. A traditional Croy and the new rearing Lipizzan, the Adonis mold. Those were both my favorites. I find that it looks really good on a very dramatic horse. And I tend to save I would say I really do I like decorator colors like this on Kathleen Moody sculpts because there's always such movement and great hair. Like there's always great hair.
I was gonna say a lot of hair.
A lot of hair. Like I did her Andalusian stallion in a galaxy, and it just like it made sense. Like, oh yeah, you should absolutely be that decorative and look like that. But I would have to say probably Adonis and Croy were my two favorites that I produced. So this one, okay, so we've finished with this one. He has the stars on. He's ready to be sealed. Now at this stage, this is where I would typically the next what's the word? The next layer of sealer on this one, I want to actually be glossed. So I'm not going to seal at this stage after you've splattered the white on. I'm not going to seal it quite yet. And the reason I'm going to feel okay getting away with that is because acrylic paint is water-based and it dries really quickly. So this, assuming that I don't, go in there and like purposely try and smear the paint away, those white stars aren't going anywhere. So from this point, let's just say I'll set him aside though, because here's the guy I had ready to go. So here he is. He's got his stars on. The next stage for him here is to get some details done. I like doing the manes, tails, and hooves of these guys in a gold acrylic paint. You, of course, can use any color that you wish. I'm getting low on one of my favorite gold paints, so I'm starting to go, should I switch it up? Like, what if I did white and then did something pearlescent over? How would that look? And that's like the majority of the fun when you get down to doing artwork of any kind for me is that stage of, what if? It can go drastically wrong, or you can go, oh my goodness, that is the coolest thing ever. I have to do that all the time now. So for gold paint, I have two that I like. The first layer, I like this folk art metallic. It's a pretty warm gold, and it's fairly sheer. That's way too much, but oh well. So I've got that in one portion of my palette here. I also really like the golden fluid acrylic. This is the iridescent gold. This is the one I'm running out of, which is a dang shame because it's my favorite. Nevertheless, we'll order more. So this is interesting. This particular gold that I'm going to use first. The first time I ever used it, I absolutely hated it. Like I went, why on earth did I buy this? You are going back to Amazon. But then I let it dry and I went over it with the other gold. And because this gold is so much warmer, almost verging on coppery, it gave it so much dimension. And I went, okay, so you're my first layer of gold and you get to extend the life of the gold paint that I actually like. I'm going to start on the tail. Alvarozo is great. I love this mold so much. And I'm so glad we have him in stablemate scale. But that mane can be tricky. His mane wraps right around his neck there. So if I go in too amped, too excited, with too big of a brush, that gold's going to end up on his neck in various places. So while I sort of get my feel for this brush, because now we're switching mediums, we're switching brush types. Sometimes it takes me a minute to go, oh yeah, you're not just like putting pigment on in a haphazard manner. So I'm going to hold him by a back leg here and start in with the paint. And you can see it goes on somewhat sheer, like that's not very opaque. And that is okay. Doesn't need to be. I've actually found with this particular paint, the folk art, if I put it on with, you know, a brush like this, and then I go over it with a totally dry brush, I didn't pay enough attention in 5 years of college, sorry mom, to know, you know, if that's an actual technique or why that happens, but it looks cool to me. Somewhere my parents are going, how much money did college cost us? So, and by the way, I do absolutely recommend working with gloves. Your fingers have, you know, oils. And I would say with models like this, it's maybe not as big of a deal, but if you handle a model barehanded, those oils are going to get onto the model. And then the next time you go and throw a layer on it, all of a sudden you see your fingerprint there, because the pigment will absolutely seek out that oil and try to adhere to it first. I made that mistake too many times. Okay, so there's a layer of gold on the tail there. Again, you can still kind of see there's definitely a black undertone to it. It's not the most opaque in the world, but that's okay because then we get to go over it with this gold. Now I'm going to use it straight out of the cap because I don't want to pour out too much of this precious, precious gold paint that I'm running out of. And sometimes I will do this, by the way, if I'm just using an acrylic to do an eye, or I'm only going to use a little dab of it. I don't even pour it into my palette. I'll just get it right out of the container, because that way none of it's going to get wasted. So you see this gold has a little bit more coverage in the way that it's going on. And even then, it doesn't have to be, you know, 100% opaque gold. Sometimes leaving a little bit of the black to shine through gives it some really great depth.
Yeah, I was gonna say if a little bit of that black pops through, it doesn't have to be 100% covered.
No, not at all. Okay.
And I know you usually use gold, but I know you mentioned maybe you could use white, but for the mane, you can use whatever color.
Honestly, whatever you'd like, whichever you'd like.
Perfect.
Oh man, do I have any of my really fine brushes clean? Let's find out. So for the mane, again, you don't have to, you can be kinder to yourself than I'm being and choose a model where the mane is maybe off the neck, but I had umpteen of these guys and I wanted to use them. So I will, with models like this, I will go in and do the more challenging parts of the mane first. Just because then I go, oh, okay, we've got those tendrils. Those tendrils are done, they're out of the way, hardest part is over. Because as you get up here toward the neck, you can you don't have to be quite as precise. Also, obviously this particular model has a horn. So if you wanted to paint the horn gold, you can paint it any color. I thought I had all unicorns of the Alvarozo, and then the sixth one I pulled out was hornless, but I didn't want to take the time to go back and dehorn the others. So we are going to have 5 cute little galaxy corns and 1 galaxy horse. All right. Let's say for the sake of time and argument that he's done, that his mane is done. Little tip, Alvarozos, don't forget that little tendril on the other side. Done that too. I also will do his hooves gold. again, you can do them whatever color you'd like. The next time I do it, I definitely want to try maybe a silver, or they even make a paint that's like a mirror. It's that silvery. I kind of want to try that. But we're going to set him off to the side there and imagine that his mane is done, his hooves are done. Actually, you know what? I should probably talk to you about eyes too. Stablemate eyes are I shouldn't say the bane of my existence, but they keep me up at night. It's so small. Don't even talk to me about micro mini eyes. I can't. Some of you artists out there who do micros on a level where the eyes don't just look like little dots. I can't imagine. I don't know how you do it. For this one though, I'm going to go back to this little tool that I use to enhance some of the stars. And again, I'm keeping the paint that's in the cap of this tube of Liquitex, because I absolutely do not need more than a dollop. In fact, dollop is even too much, a dab. And by the way, I am underslept and over caffeinated, so you'll have to forgive my shakiness here. So I'm just going to take that little pinpoint of paint, find his eye, and just sort of tap it on there. And I'll find a
For anyone with shaky hands, I can say I am having a hard time. I do not have a steady hand.
It's tough. But again, that's one of the nice things about the Galaxy horses being decorators, is I don't necessarily feel the need to have the eyes be totally realistic. So
Yeah,
I
no,
just
it is
do,
nice.
yeah. And by the way, I'm doing this in sort of a magenta. He's giving Lucifer a little, but I'm fine with that. He's just gonna have to. Have you guys been to Denver International Airport and seen the rearing horse with the flaming red eyes? It's horrifying and funny and amazing and terrifying. I love it. So there he is. I would also, if I had my black paint within reach, I would add just a teensy little pupil there. I'm not going to do that right now. And by the way, I've done eyes of all colors for the Galaxy horses. Like a mint green or teal can be really nice to use. You can make them realistic. You can make them gold if you want to match the rest of the details, whatever you would like. So then this is the final stage. He has been glossed. He has his eyes done, his hooves are done, his mane is done. The gloss that I like, you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes, I'm getting ahead of myself. One last little thing I like to do, I'm gonna set him back off to the side there. I'm bringing this guy back, the one who hasn't had his final seal, because there's a fun little touch that I like to do that I think can really make the mane and tail color pop. I'm going to use the Liquitex gloss medium. And this one is, there we go. I'm going to put a little bit of that in my palette. And I'm going to add a color shift pigment. These are brand, I think, is Born Pretty, and I got them on Amazon. It's a mirror powder. So this is something that people use. They mix it with clear resin to do like resin art. And you can kind of see on the inside of the cap there, it looks like a white powder inside the canister there, but it's got a shift. It's got a color shift to it. Now, I've done different colors of this. Typically, if I'm doing a piece for somebody, I'll always give them the option to choose what color shift do you want on the mane and tail, what color eyes do you want. But I'm going to take same brush that I used on the mane and tail. I prefer a flatter brush for mane and tail, because I find that I've got more control with a flat kind of narrow brush like that. And I'm just going to kind of use my paintbrush here to spoon some of that pigment into the gloss medium. Mix it so that it's fairly smooth consistency. How am I on time? Oh, we're getting close. And then I'm going to brush that gloss over the gold. This one that I picked kind of has a bit of a green shift to it. And this is another one of those times, this is tricky because it sort of globs on, especially in the crevices of the hair. It has a tendency to sort of build up. and then need to be blended out, but that's okay. It takes a minute to dry. This stuff takes several minutes, in fact, so you have some time to work with it. So there, I've sort of, slapped it on. We'll set that brush aside and grab, well, in a perfect world, there you are, and grab a dry brush, one that's totally dry, and sort of go through and disperse any of the gloss medium that has built up in places. So when that dries, you're going to have a gold mane and tail, yes, but you're also going to have this sort of a layer of a subtle color shifty sheen. So when you hold it and move it in the light, it's going to have a cool effect. This one that I finished, I did with it's kind of more of a purple pink color shift to it. And you can do any color that you want. I've done it with blue, I've done it with green, whichever you prefer. I will say it can be hard though, because when you look at the color in the pot, that doesn't necessarily indicate what it's going to look like on the model. So I always say to do, see, I get this from doing makeup. I say do a test swatch. Take it, swatch it on your skin. That way you'll kind of get more of an idea for what it's going to look like. So the gloss, oh my goodness. I have tried some gloss sealers that I want to chuck the can after one use because I hated it so much. The Testors Extreme Lacquer, I hoard this like a dragon with so much treasure. It is amazing. It scares you at first because it goes on. First of all, it's in these tiny little cans. This is an insult to my hoarding capabilities. I want big cans. I want this size. But it goes on pretty thick. I will say I'm obviously not going to spray this inside my house. I seal my models outside, never in the garage. Nathan, if you're watching, never. Wouldn't dream of it. You want to obviously shake it really well, shake it, and then when you think you're done shaking it, shake it a few more times, right? And particularly with the gloss, I'll always kind of give it a test spritz just to make sure it's going to come out okay. Because especially if you're buying this stuff online, God only knows. God only knows what temperatures it might have been in on its way to you. And so the worst thing that you could possibly have experienced is when you've got a model that's done, it's gorgeous, you're ready to seal it, you spray on a sealer that comes out in giant clumps because it wasn't shaken enough, or it comes out, it's bad. It's bad. I've done it. I've had sealer that has been in my garage through probably too many highs and lows temperature wise and has completely fogged up on a model. So make sure that when they tell you that you keep these cans in an environment that's not going to get too hot or too cold, do it. But anyway, I'll hold a model at arm's length away. And this in particular, you don't want to hold too close. I mean, any sealer you don't want to hold too close, but this will create drips very easily. You want to spray it on generously, but not so much that it starts to run, because if it starts to run, that can impact obviously what's underneath of it, but it can also dry in those drips, and that's not ideal. But spray it till it looks like it's soaking wet, this guy, and then set it someplace where dust is minimal. And don't touch it, like overnight level of don't touch it, because this stuff takes a while to dry in my experience. And because I'm impatient, I have to keep it while it's drying, come somewhere completely out of sight, because otherwise I'll keep coming up to be like, you dry yet? And it never is. So it can be tough, especially if, like me, you're a tail holder. There are definitely times where I have finished the model and I go, I guess I need to finish the tail now. Like the rest of the horse is done and I've completely forgotten that I've been holding it by the tail this whole time. Totally fine. Don't worry about it. Just wait until it's completely dry. Make sure you're gloved. And then once it, again, is completely dry and you're gloved, you can hold it on the body with no problem. And at that point, even if the tail is still black from the chalkboard paint, it's really easy to, throw a few layers of gold on there, let it dry, do your color shift. And if you want to, like, obviously you can spray it with the lacquer. Sometimes I will just go in with the gloss medium. In my experience, it dries down really well, and it's darn near the same as the spray. That said, if you've got it lying around and you want to give the tail itself a quick gloss, you can do that after the fact. That's totally fine. So I am parched.
And so after you do the gloss, the gloss is that's the final step, and then you end up with that little stablemate that you were showing us in the beginning. And
Yes.
that's all the pigment powders and all the stars, all the gold, everything in its final stages.
Yep, this is the final right there. Final gloss, final seal, final everything. Now, that's not to say that if I notice something on it and I go, uh-oh, I missed that, you can absolutely go back in and fix it. You can always add to it. It's just going to mean that you need to seal it one more time. But, at this point, that's totally okay. And by the way, if you have one like this and it's not glossy enough, throw some more gloss on there. Go out for another layer. That's
Never
totally
enough.
okay too.
There's never enough gloss.
Never enough gloss.
All right. As we're wrapping this up, do you have any last minute wise words of wisdom for anyone participating? Last minute suggestions before we
Never.
wrap up our National Fun Day?
Wisdom. Just I'll tell you guys, y'all, the same thing that I tell my daughter and that I tell myself. Well, actually, first, if I can indulge me, I'm going to tell you a little story. So, like I alluded to, and also alluded to with the cup, by the way, go Ducks. I majored in art at U of O, mostly because that was back in the early 2000s when people would tell you, oh, it's just important to get an education, get a degree. It doesn't matter what it's in. Well, that may not be the case anymore, but it was then. So I was like, oh, well, I want to do something that's going to help me stay sane throughout 4 to 5 years of college. So I'm going to study art and art history. And it was amazing and it was great and wonderful. But I realized by probably week 3, most of my art was focused on oh my gosh, on photography, and film photography, and we had to learn how to develop the film. We learned how to print from our negatives and develop like the whole kit and caboodle. If I had a dark room in my house, I would die a happy woman. But I realized that I was so terrified. I had this roll of black and white film that I had taken, what I thought, of course, were life-changing photos. And I thought, oh gosh, what if I ruin this? What if I go in and try and develop this film and the pictures they're obliterated? What if I suck? What if I'm terrible? And so because we only had one room and it was in complete darkness where you could unspool the film, put it in the canister. We only had one, so everyone had to take turns. And I waited till like the very end of the week. I was the last person to learn how to develop the film because I was so afraid I was going to ruin it. It was hard. It was really hard. And I don't think I could do it today because, again, the muscle memory is just not there anymore. But ultimately, like, the first step to being good at something is being bad at it. Like, nobody, I'm sure there are prodigies out there, but nobody, sits down to do a brand new to them thing and is a world beater the first time out. It's not typical. So you're going to have to make some mistakes, and like, Bob Ross, was it Bob Ross who said there aren't any mistakes, they're just, happy accidents or something like that? I don't know.
So.
Something like that. My knowledge of Bob Ross is failing me right now, but like you can make a mistake and then fix the mistake. Like, again, there's nothing saying that if I got to, let's say, this stage of the horse and I went, well, this isn't going at all like I wanted at all, ever. You can go out and spray it again with the chalkboard paint and start from scratch. I've had horses that were supposed to be here, show you, and I'm handling him with bare hands, but he's going to have to deal with it. He was not supposed, this one, for instance, this is a little resin. This is a ceramic resin. He was not supposed to be a pinto. But there were some areas on him where I couldn't get that shading. I couldn't get those pastels to blend to save my life. So I went, well, guess who's a pinto now? So just my last, I guess, pearl of wisdom for you would be patient with yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. Just try things for the sake of seeing what will happen. My friend Shauna, she recommended to me to get, an old beat up body, and have that be like your test dummy, where you go, oh gosh, I wonder what would happen if I did this technique. And you just have that blank canvas next to you so that you don't accidentally mess up something that you spent 2 weeks on and is now, and it's now ruined. So just try things. just try things for the sake of trying them. You could discover you really hate it, or you could discover your new favorite to you technique. So
No,
that would be.
that is some great wisdom to end our National Fun Day. Thank you, Missy,
Oh,
for
thank you.
teaching us how to make these beautiful ponies. And thank you everyone who was able to join us. If you were only able to join us for one or all four, all these workshops will be recorded and posted on our website. Everyone have a great rest of your Saturday.